When it comes to tomatoes, more is more. We can't get enough of them and want to do everything we can to make sure we get the biggest harvest possible.
And one of the simplest and most effective ways is pruning. Done correctly, it can seriously maximise your tomato haul. In this video, we'll show you step by step how easy it is to prune your tomato plants so you get more tomatoes with less hassle. Let's get started.
We planted these cherry tomato plants as seeds in February and they're ready for a prune. But why does pruning matter? And what happens if you don't prune? Tomato plants naturally grow tall and bushy with lots of extra foliage. If left unpruned, they become dense, tangled mess that blocks sunlight, traps moisture and limits airflow, creating the perfect environment for diseases like blight. This overcrowding causes the plant to waste energy on unnecessary stems and leaves instead of developing fruit, often resulting in smaller, slower ripening tomatoes. When you prune, you're helping redirect the plant's energy towards fewer, stronger stems and better quality fruit, leading to a healthier plant and a bigger, tastier harvest.
Let's talk about the two different types of tomato plants. This is where it gets slightly more complicated, but don't worry, it will all make sense. So not all tomato plants need the same type of pruning. If you're growing indeterminate tomatoes, then pruning is essential. But if you're growing determinate tomatoes, you'll want to prune very lightly or not at all. So what on earth does indeterminate and determinate mean? And how do I know which type of tomatoes I have? Well, determinate tomatoes, also known as bush tomatoes, are compact and grow to a set height, typically about 3 or 5 feet. This is why they're called determinate. They grow to a determined height. Indeterminate tomatoes, or cordon tomatoes, are vining and grow continuously, often reaching heights of 10 feet or more. They can become sprawling beasts and will require support to help them grow. The only thing that will stop an indeterminate tomato growing is your climate. Once the growing season finishes, the plant will eventually die back. Now it will say on the seed packet what type you have, so do check yours if you're not sure, because it is really important to know how to prune yours. And all the tomato plants that we are growing are indeterminate. They're growing nice and tall, and we've kind of been pruning them as we've been going along, but we're now going to show you exactly how to do just that. We're now ready to start pruning. And first of all, we need to identify the suckers.
Pardon?
The suckers. So your tomato plant will have a main leading stem that goes up through the middle, from which the leaves and eventually the fruits will develop. So this bit here is the leaf or the sun leaf, which the plant uses to photosynthesize. We've got the main trunk here, and then in between we have this bad boy. This is a sucker. You can normally trace these all the way up the tomato plant, growing in that nook between the leaf and the main stem. So once you identify one, you'll be able to identify them all. They're dead easy to spot.
So what do we need to do with the suckers once we've identified them?
Well, if we don't prune this sucker, it will grow into a full branch, which will take energy away from the main fruiting stem. Take this plant over here, for example. So I must have missed pruning this guy, this sucker here, because it's growing nearly as much as the main leader. So if you leave these untamed, they'll just continue to grow and grow and grow, and you'll have suckers all over the place. This might sound great, but like we said, this tends to lead to a poor harvest and smaller fruits. So in an ideal world, they should be pruned off when they're still small and easy to pinch off with your fingers.
What if they are too big to pinch off?
Well, don't worry too much about it. If you don't spot the suckers early enough, or you leave them a little bit too long, then they are easy to cut off with a nice clean pair of pruners, just like so. So further down on this plant, there are a few suckers that are much smaller than the one I've just cut off. So I can easily go in there, like this one for example, in between the leaf and the main leader of the tomato plant. Just go in there, your thumb and your finger, and pinch it off. So that's one there. There's also one lower down. That's a bit thick actually to pinch off. And probably do that one, like so. There are a couple that are thicker, like for example this one here. Now I could try and pinch that off, but I'm just a bit worried that it might do damage to the main stem of the tomato. So again, I'm going to get my pruners and cut as close to the stem as possible.
So I can see how it's easy to identify the suckers that are lower down, but what about the ones at the top? How do you make sure you don't cut off the main stem?
That's an important point, and I would err on the side of caution, to be honest, because the last thing you want to do is cut off the top of the plant and restrict its growth. So it can be a little bit tricky to identify the main leader and a sucker at the top of the plant. If in doubt, I would wait, just let it grow a little bit more until it becomes more obvious. But for example, in this guy here, I can see that this is the main stem, because it tends to be where the main action is, a bit more bushy, a bit more developed, and there's usually a set of buds starting to develop. Whereas I can see here, there's no flowering buds starting to develop. It's quite small, the leaf growth, compared to at the top. So I know that that's a sucker. It's in between a leaf here and the main stem at the top. So I can just go in and safely pinch that out. But if you are unsure, do leave it maybe a week or so or something like that, just to let it develop, and then you can easily identify where the suckers are. So we do have a tomato plant right here that is in desperate need of a pruning. There are quite a lot of suckers on it. So I've left that one untouched basically in preparation for this video to show how to prune. But I reckon Mrs. Sheffield can have a go at pruning that to show how easy it is.
Thank you, I'd love to have a go. Right, so I'll start at the bottom with any ones that are easy to identify. So I reckon that one there can just be pinched out. Okay, that's one. This one here is quite thick. Do that one. One here, getting the hang of it now.
I think that is a sucker. I think you might have clipped off the leaf by mistake.
Oh.
That one. So we can chop that off. I think you got the leaf instead by mistake.
Oops. Does that mean the plant is doomed, or is it going to be okay?
There's still lots of leaves for it to photosynthesize, and it will continue to grow more.
That one's definitely a sucker there.
Yeah.
And then this one at the top, I'm pretty sure that's the sucker and that's the main stem, would you say?
I would say that, yeah. There's a lot more action going on up here. There's a flower at the top. That normally means that that's the main leader, and that's just ripe for pruning off.
Okay. Can't see any more.
That's one, isn't it, I think?
Oh yeah. Oh, so that's the leaf there.
That's the leaf, yeah. Little small leaf.
A big one. How
Call Mrs. Sheffield out.
Yeah. There we go.
Other than that, I think we've got most of them. I think we'll keep an eye on that one. That probably is a sucker that we need to cut off.
Okay.
That's all done now, isn't it?
Yes.
Looking much more trim. Now that we've tamed the beast on most of our tomato plants here by removing the suckers, we now need to help the plant avoid disease, and we do that by removing any leaves that are touching the soil at the base of the plant. This is because they're more likely to come into contact with soil-borne diseases such as early blight or fungal spores, which can easily spread upwards through the plant. So leaves near the ground stay wetter for longer from watering or rain, creating ideal conditions for rot and infection. So we're going to get rid of that leaf right there. So on this guy, we do have a leaf that is touching the soil, so we can remove that. But we also have a couple of yellowing leaves here, which you can leave on to help photosynthesize, but they do risk spreading disease to the rest of the plant. So you can prune them off like so. Just a quick note on these suckers that we did cut off. You can actually turn these into new tomato plants. We won't do it because we've got about 100 tomato plants in our greenhouse. But these, you can pop them into water or soil and they will grow roots quite easily, and they'll turn into a new tomato plant. So it's a good backup to have in case your one and only plant dies.
So is there anything else that we need to think about?
There is. So firstly, it's a good idea to avoid pruning when the foliage of the tomato plant is wet, as water can transfer disease spores. Think of spores as like the seed to plant disease, which we don't want to spread through the plant and onto its neighbours. We also need to make sure that we don't over prune. Leaves are essential for photosynthesis, of course, Without enough foliage, the plant will struggle to produce the energy it needs to grow and ripen those beautiful fruits. Remember, if you do have a determinate tomato plant, don't prune too heavily. Stick to lower leaves that touch the soil and any dead, yellowing or damaged leaves to keep the plant nice and healthy. The general rule is to not prune anything above the first set of flowers, as this will only take away fruit from the plant.
If you keep up with regular pruning a couple of times a week, you'll have stronger, healthier tomato plants and loads of tomatoes. If you want tips on the mistakes to avoid when watering your garden, including your tomato plants, watch this video next.